Hey there, and welcome to this week's edition of the Create With podcast with me, James and Kieran.
Hello, everyone.
And we're really lucky to be joined this week by a really special guest, Max from 100 School. So, hey, Max.
Hey, James and Kieran. Yeah, really lovely to be here.
Yeah, we thought it would be great to talk to you on, the anniversary of 100 School, which is the kind of NoCode AI school that you run. Obviously, we've known each other for a good few years, and I think we met kind of properly in person at the NoCode Summit.
Yes.
And it's been, we really love everything you're doing with 100 School. So we thought it would be great to do a bit of a special episode and get Max on to talk about a little bit what about your experience with running 100 School and some of the trends you're seeing with people taking your courses and what they're doing with their careers. Because obviously we're aware this is a big time of people changing careers and wanting to upskill and learn more with no code and AI, and more people are going to are wanting to get into that. So it's going to be fascinating to dive into that a little bit. But first of all, I guess congratulations on 5 years of 100 School. That's amazing. We saw the great video that was shared around with a ton of people, including me and Kieran, who were kind of sharing our stories of knowing you over the years. And there were a ton of students in there as well, which I thought was awesome, about saying how 100 School had really helped them on their journeys. So I thought it might be good to just start with winding back 5 years and how the whole thing started and where it came from, where the idea from it came from, and how you got it started off the ground at the beginning.
Yeah, totally. And really appreciate all the love for kind of the 5-year anniversary. It does make me feel slightly old, but it's okay. And I think what's interesting is obviously the 5 years is kind of significant for us, but also it's kind of interesting looking back at like how much AI and no code has changed in that period of time and what it means now versus what it meant then, and how we're seeing kind of different, let's say, all very similar trends at the start of AI as we were seeing at the start of no code. But yeah, let me kind of bring it back to how it all got started. So essentially, while I was at university, I wanted to build a startup, but I had no technical skills. And in that time, I basically worked on a storage or an Airbnb for storage startup, where we raised a tiny bit of money. We won a few awards, but we had zero product. And the two co-founders that I had were conveniently non-technical as well. So we couldn't actually do anything, and we were completely reliant on developers, as the usual kind of story is. Anyway, we kind of realized very quickly that we just couldn't iterate fast enough to our users and their needs and their feedback, which felt really kind of crushing at a time when we wanted to move fast, but we just couldn't. So eventually that failed. But what it did do, as I was kind of leaving university, it did plant a good seed in my mind to actually learn some technical skills. So COVID hit. We all had a little bit of spare time on our hands, and I'd seen this thing called 100 Days of Code. Now, thankfully, I did not start that because that would have been very painful. But before I did do that, I heard about this kind of weird world of no code, which sounded a little bit too good to be true. And that's where I think I started seeing Kieran on Twitter and a few of the other kind of more popular folks in the no-code space. So I basically just announced and said, hey, I'm going to start learning this no-code skill. I have no clue what it is. It sounds great. I'm going to completely DIY this 100-day journey. Does anyone want to join? And that's how it began.
So it was really from kind of starting out in COVID, and it was such a chaotic time. But I think it probably aligns a bit with mine and Kieran's experiences of kind of being in startups before. And I think a lot of people empathize with that whole shipping speed and iterating speed, and I think we've all probably been in startups where
Yeah.
it's been a coded startup, and the iterating time is just really slow. So it was just so exciting starting to see these kind of no code technologies come along to the point where you could actually build a product with them that you could charge money for.
Yeah.
And yeah, that must have changed a lot over the last 5 years, because even when you started this, through to now, the
Yes.
technology's
Yes.
come along quite a bit. And have you, I guess you've been updating what you teach as
Quickly.
things are changing. Like, have you moved more into kind of AI, for example, recently?
Yeah. It is kind of crazy, isn't it? The shift in, I think we were all like so excited in 2020 because it like gave us a glimpse into the first inklings of what you could build without writing any code. And that in and of itself was just incredibly exciting because it was the first time we had a kind of a second option other than the default path, which is fundamentally, or was fundamentally, just really inaccessible for lots of people. So we're given some toys to play with, and we could build some things in 2020. But what's interesting now is, like, yesterday I just saw on Twitter someone that had vibe coded a EA like a sports game in like under 2 hours in the afternoon. It literally looked like an exact replica of FIFA, and it was just crazy, like how the step change has happened so quickly since kind of the release of probably AI or some of the bigger tools in late 2022. So that shift in terms of what you can do has really changed. How fast you can do it has really changed, but the fundamental premise has stayed the same, which is allowing all of us kind of non-techies to share our ideas. And all along, I think the theme, and it's becoming even more important now, is it's getting easier to build, it's getting harder to sell. So how do you kind of stand out in this world where anyone can build their own ideas, is kind of becoming the more central question as building gets easier.
So, Max, what do you think about, some people are like, okay, anyone can build an app now. Like, you just have to write a prompt and, you've got yourself an app. So why would anyone pay for anyone else's app? Because you can just build it yourself. My personal thought is, like, I actually don't think that many people want to build their own apps. They don't, and even if they did want to, I think an even smaller proportion of those people actually have the right kind of mindset to be able to build an app, because you still need a lot of logic, even if you're coding it or whatever. What are your thoughts based on, like, the people you've seen coming through 100 School? Do you see that, like, there's loads of people who are just like never done anything technical and then all of a sudden they want to build apps, or is it a specific kind of people or person that comes through and says, I want to learn this?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, because I agree. Regardless of how easy it is to create an app, there is a similar, like, connected to building an app, and also it is still a lot of work. You have to maintain the app, you have to write the prompt still, and there's always that kind of that 80% where you can get to, and then the 20% which most people can't get over the line, and that's where you need that grit, that like willingness to actually do that last 20%, and then also the knowledge to do it as well. And most people just don't have those things, which is why, on the boot camps and our curriculums, we see a lot of people that basically come in maybe very non-technically, but also that come in with a very aligned mindset. And that is one that is like high agency, hungry to learn, and they've got the patience and the willingness to get their hands dirty and actually take ownership over what they can create. And I think it's that fundamental, like, difference between creators and consumers. And we often see a lot of people that want to and perceive themselves as creators, but just don't have the skills yet. And that's kind of where we try and, let's say, plug the gap on that person's journey. Because they're so excited that they even have the possibility to become a creator now. It's just, they just need the pathway, the hand holding to get there.
Do you see a specific kind of job role that comes in, like product managers, marketers? I guess obviously the main one would be people who have worked with developers before, whether they've hired an agency or they've worked with in-house developers, and they know how frustrating it can be being reliant on other people to build out something that's in your head. So I think they're like the number one probably, but do you see any other like patterns of the kinds of people that come through?
Totally, yeah. We're seeing a lot of what I'm kind of calling these Swiss Army knife full stack roles or positions that require and demand not just one skill, but multiple skills in a singular role. So for example, as you say, Kieran, we're seeing a lot of product managers, marketers, designers, and operators come in who are all essentially in roles that are very generalistic in the value that they provide, not only in soft skills, but also hard skills. And what we've seen is that teams are getting smaller. So roles are kind of bringing in, or roles are essentially becoming bigger, but for one person. So they're needing to add maybe a skill that they probably didn't need to have a year ago or 2 years ago, but because of AI, they're now required to have it. So product teams are getting smaller. So, the product manager themselves actually may want to be the one building it, versus 2 years ago, they probably weren't involved in that process at all. So yeah, definitely seeing that trend for especially those kind of Swiss Army knife professionals. Yep.
And that's definitely something that I think we saw a lot at all the events we went to last year, No Code Summit, BubbleCon, a lot of these events. A lot of the people I met there were coming from product backgrounds, like product managers transitioning. And like you say, I think there is a big kind of realignment of a lot of industries around AI now that you can do so much, as an individual with kind of orchestrating AIs and agents to take on like the roles of team members. And a great example, I think, that's been quite open about what they're doing was Klarna, and how they're kind of ditching a lot of the SaaS that they purchase. So like they ditch Salesforce and they're writing their own versions of that software with no code and AI to kind of run things. But then, obviously their team needs to be upskilled to be able to build and operate that technology in-house, because up to now, you just buy a license to Salesforce, but it's increasingly, that they'll build something themselves and then run it.
Yeah, I mean, with Klarna, it's interesting as well because, of course, the headline is always is that they've kind of removed a huge amount of their kind of customer service agents and have replaced that with this kind of automated AI-based customer agent that delivers the same or on par results as a human assistant would. But then the kind of the backstory, if you look at it, they hired 40 AI engineers over a period of 9 to 12 months, and that's just unrealistic for lots of companies to be able to do that. So then it becomes a case of, well, what internal resource do you already have, and what skills do you already have to build it yourselves, and that may be a little bit more of a scrappier solution rather than a full custom AI built thing for your company.
And are there any kind of tools in particular that you're seeing like a lot of interest around people wanting to learn? So whether it's maybe something like Zapier or workflow based stuff, or actually building apps, like technology to build apps, or just how to use actual AI themselves. So I mean, are there any tools that you're noticing like more demand for than others, like in terms of people when they sign up what they want to learn?
Yeah, so I think like we saw in the early days of no code, the kind of the leading tool, and is still, of course, one of the leading tools, but that kind of had the biggest, let's say, brand clout in the space that brought people in, was Bubble. and people always came to me and Kieran and Shaw and you, James, as well, like how to learn Bubble was the first question. But of course, that was never really the recommended one to start with, because it's a little bit of a shock to the system if you think you're coming in for an easy ride and then you start there. I found that, as you well know. But in terms of how that has changed over the last year or so, I think people are talking a lot about Replit as a tool that you can host in, you can deploy, you can create basically everything in that one tool as a kind of an extension of no-code development, but in an AI first way. So Replit is one, and then I think you've also got kind of the other emerging tools in that space that are all very similar, like the cursors, the bolts, the lovables. And again, to what extent those are non-technical friendly is another question. But what we do know is that each month, each week, they are getting, let's say, easier for non-technical folks, and even Lovable, for example, are getting close to Webflow's kind of territory, because they've started adding kind of visual interface elements to your building process in Lovable. So yeah, it's a really sorry, it's a really interesting space.
What is your feeling on how far the AI can go? Do you think we will ever get to a point where a non-coder can confidently build a complex app just by prompting and put it into production and get users and be confident of like the security and being able to fix bugs and all this stuff? Or do you think it's just not going to happen?
Yeah, I'd love to play this question back to you both. I think my take is I think that first stage is very much already here, or in the next 2 months. I think I saw Anthropic's CEO kind of mention that within the next 6 months, 80% of code is going to be written by AI, and then within the next year, it's a very real possibility that 100% of code is written by AI. Now, of course, where he's probably talking in the realms of tech rather than outside of that, because we know we're in a bubble, of course. But that is like the trend is happening, has happened, and will continue to happen. I think as for the production side, then the maintenance of a complex app, I think that's a whole nother question. Because if you don't know what you're maintaining and don't understand what sits underneath it, then that's a whole nother question. And I don't know enough about that process to know whether it's feasible for AI to help you understand what it has built to the extent where you can then manage it yourself as well. But what do you guys think on that one?
I had an interesting interaction on like Ben Tossell, obviously the godfather of no code and now AI as well, asked like how people are finding it coding with AI, and I said I still find it really hard, and he was like, why? And I said, well, I've got, it churns out all these files, it churns out so much stuff. I have no idea what any of these files do. I don't understand any of the code. I mean, yes, if I looked at a tiny little bit of code, I might be able to figure out what it's doing, but there's just too much of it. And then I'm like typing stuff into my terminal and running these commands. And then that's churning out loads more lines of stuff that I don't understand. So all the hosting, the infrastructure, everything is like, it's just for me to get a handle on. It's a lot, and I find Bubble quite intuitive, but this is like next level. And I did spend quite a few years trying to learn how to code. But then another guy commented below, and he was like, well, hopefully like all of that stuff, the infrastructure will be abstracted away, so you won't have to see any of that. And even like the code will be abstracted away. And then I was thinking, well, surely we're then just going back to no code and like visual development tools where you don't see the code. And visual development, it's generating code every time you drag and drop something onto a screen. With AI, it's going to be you type it in plain English and it does it for you, which is not really that different. It's kind of the same thing. Either you type it in or you drag it and drop it, and you're asking it to do stuff. And yes, typing it in or maybe speaking to it might be a bit faster, but at the end of the day, you're still abstracting away everything. So yeah, I don't know what the future's going to be, and I can imagine that like AIs are going to get really, really solid. And when you get to a point where you can trust them to be consistent and know how to fix bugs, and they fully understand your entire app, and they can make decisions about like what is the best stack, what is the best way to do this, how can I refactor this code without messing up the existing app. As soon as they can do that and you feel confident, I guess it would be realistic for someone who can't code to like build stuff. But will they get there? I don't know. It still seems like quite far off, because AI is still making mistakes all the time when I use it. What do you think, James?
Yeah, I think I agree, and like we've said before, I think we're on a bit of a transition. Like at the moment, still for me, Bubble is the hub of my like world for building software still, and I use Bubble as a like the hub, and then connect out to little AI services that I've built to kind of call data back in, because for me that's more maintainable and manageable. I love the visual workflows of being able to see how the whole app is built and what it's doing. I am quite optimistic that we will get to that point where a no coder can deploy a production grade profitable app without being able to code using AI, and have AI be able to even manage the operations of the app and describe what's happening. But we're not there yet, and I think there is a bit of a way to go with that to get it to that point. And that's why I still like this combination of using a no-code tool with AI-generated code. Like, for example, my app has tons and tons of custom code in it, but 100% of it is AI-generated now. Like, I think a bit like what the guy from Anthropic was saying. So yeah, it's definitely been it's interesting to be on that transition, but it's a way off yet. But I suspect, given the pace of announcements that we're seeing and progress, every week there seems to be some kind of big breakthrough. I think it may come around sooner than we think.
Yeah, and it's like, it's worth remembering that I saw something where someone said like the AI at the moment is like, right, if you give it 100 coding problems, it'll get like 40 or 50 of them right. And I was like, well, that sounds terrible. But then they said like even top developers would only get 40 or 50 right. And I was like, well, that sounds terrible as well. So human developers and like all these huge apps and stuff that we use, like I don't know if you've logged into Facebook recently, but the complexity of those apps, is worth remembering that there's probably no one who understands how they all work, and probably a lot of it, the internet is held together with like a piece of like string or something, or like balanced on someone's like open source project that they've been maintaining for no reward for the past like 20 years. So yeah, I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where software is like perfect all the time, because humans can't do it, AI can't do it yet. They probably won't ever be able to, but as long as it works like most of the time, I guess you'd be happy.
Yeah, and I mean, I was reading, like, with your example there of Meta and Facebook, I believe they have their own internal AI that's trained on their own code base that they're using to kind of build the app. But then I kind of, as a user of Facebook and like their ads platform, I'm like, wow, is anyone actually using it? Because it's so bad. Like, it's like, as a user trying to do anything on Facebook, there are tons of bugs and stuff. So the evidence would say that maybe they're not quite there yet with like actually using AI to fix everything, because as a platform, as it's so massive, there are so many bugs and they're still there. So I'm guessing that's going to improve over the next few years, but interesting to follow. I mean, the one of the other things I was going to talk about was kind of the evolution of the kind of search trends and what going from no code through to AI. And I'm going to throw up an interesting graph actually here, which is the search trends. So if you're on the visual version, you can see this. But basically, we're looking at 3 lines on a Google search trends charts of visual development, which is kind of static, flowing along, no code, which has kind of a fairly gentle increase, and then vibe coding, which has got this vertical line up over the last kind of 2 or 3 months and is now the top line. So more people are searching for the term vibe coding than no code or visual development as of kind of right now. So I have either of you two kind of picked up on this? I know there's a lot been written about it online. I'm reading like that term seems to have got a lot of traction. And yeah, Max, is it something you're seeing people wanting to learn more about, that vibe coding term?
Yeah, I mean, it speaks to, you know, that people are inherently lazy, right? And anything that is potentially easier or kind of more chill, or just like you're just sort of vibing out, doing a little, watching a bit of TV, bit of Netflix in the background. You've got some nice, you're sipping some nice tea in the background, whatever. Like from a branding point of view, it makes total sense. And like one example of this is obviously Peter Levels, who's obviously created the kind of the flight simulator, and he's now, I think, hit 87K MRR, and that was from building an application using Claude and kind of just like one-shot prompting his way to building this simulator. Oh, could you just like create this aircraft, and then like when I press left, like turn it left, and just like, and then, oh, could you just do the same but then for when I want to turn right, and just very nonchalantly talking conversationally to AI in a way that you eventually stumble on building your application. I think that appeals to a lot of people because it makes sense to a lot of people. As for whether it is productive and is able to produce applications you want to build, I'm not so sure. But it's definitely something we're seeing more and more people want and ask for. And I think then it comes the question of how do you give people a structure to vibe code, even though that is the opposite of what vibing is meant to be. So yeah, have you seen that as well on your side in terms of the appeal and people wanting to get started?
I mean, yeah, I can definitely relate to it, because it's I think, and half of it is knowing how to interact with the LLMs and how to get the most out of them, that you get into that kind of flow where you are generating stuff and it works, or then you're maybe, you know, taking an error, putting it back in, fixing it as you go. It is an interesting term, and I just find it, you know, it's quite fascinating that it's got so much traction over the last few kind of months, relatively, you know, to no code, that I think we've all kind of thought no code as a kind of a term and as a movement has kind of underperformed against my expectations. And I feel like AI, vibe coding, this kind of new wave is, you know, it's already outgrown 5 years of no code in terms of search volume. So it does feel like there's something interesting there. But yeah, I think, like we kind of touched on earlier, I do think it's still kind of early days in the technology, and to get to kind of production grade stuff, it's still kind of early. I mean, I have shipped a ton of features in my app that I would say were kind of vibe coded, because it's, you know, from using Claude or Grok 3 in particular to write these features and then iterate them and ship them. I mean, it's kind of the same experience, I find, really, as building it with the no code builder, like in Bubble itself. That was the other kind of tool where I've really got to a flow state of like really shipping tons of stuff quickly. I think what this kind of vibe coding for me has meant is that I could do more complex features that were really doing stuff that isn't possible in a no-code platform. It just like through doing complex calculations and stuff like that would just not have been possible to do in Bubble natively, like particularly for like analytical based features is where I found it really amazing. But what is really on my wish list is to be able to vibe code UI. Obviously, like in Bubble still, I've seen some really exciting demos, but you're still really building the UI manually by hand using, you know, a component kit or whatever. but in Claude I can generate really quite cool React UIs, from just a bit of prompting. But then obviously I can't really deploy those into my app all my UIs in Bubble. So that's really the missing part of vibe coding as a no coder that I'm really excited for, is being able to do entire UIs based on a consistent kind of design framework. That for me is going to be the biggest unlock, because I don't know about either of you, but I find building UIs takes absolutely ages, especially to do it right, keeping it easy to use and simple. And AI, from what I've seen, is able to generate really, really nice UIs really quickly. So that's kind of the next big vibe coding unlock that I'm really excited about.
On that one actually as well, it feels like we're probably getting close to a space where you can, and I think I've seen a few examples of this, where you literally take a screenshot of a website that you like the look of, or a flow in an application or whatever, and just like going on that, riffing on that theme of vibe coding, just being like, here's the attached image, like build it to look like that. And then it's there's you're kind of riffing on UI patterns and UX as well, that is like proven in other applications. I think that's one thing. I've seen Galileo AI make an interesting start to helping you build visual like layouts really quickly. So I think that's a tool to check out on that front. But you're right, James. I think that is the next step on kind of vibe coding.
The interesting thing for me is that I always thought, like, I enjoy building as an activity, and I thought that I enjoyed the intellectual challenge of building an app and figuring out the difficult workflows and all this stuff. But then after I tried a bit of AI coding or vibe coding, I actually, even though it's very easy, you're basically doing nothing. You tell it the app you want, and then you say fix all the bugs, keep going. But I found that when I got something that worked at the end, I did feel that same buzz that I get from building a feature that works in Bubble, which is weird. And I wonder if there is some point where it's not going to be fun, and we're going to be like, it's too easy. I literally type one prompt, outputs the app. I wonder if we'll still feel satisfied that we've actually achieved something, or if it will just be like, no. Because like if you said to a carpenter or a painter or something, just, did you know you can just push this button and those shelves will be built, or your painting will be done for you, I don't think they'd get the same satisfaction. They want to actually go through the process, whereas we are getting to a point where we're bypassing the whole process of the thing we enjoy. And yeah, I wonder if the fun will go away at some point. But I did enjoy, like, vibe coding, something that actually worked, and clicking the buttons and being like, I built this. But yeah, who knows? It is weird.
It's interesting, and it kind of, to me, starts me thinking about the whole existential question of, yes, vibe coding is very cool. AI generated code is quite fun to see, but actually, it's at the back of my mind. It's also ringing alarm bells of the entire SaaS industry is about to be destroyed completely. Because if it is this easy to build software, and you can build your own software from a prompt that is able to run and operate itself, well, then how do I fit into that? That is it's a big question, and it's one that's going to be really interesting to see unfold over the next few years. And I think all three of us, with 100 School and Create with the conference and online, what we're trying to do is help as many people, I guess, equip themselves to operate in that world, and to kind of navigate it as best as possible by being aware of the tools and being able to use them as much as they can. Because it's going to be a very disruptive time, and that's always on my mind. Is yes, it's getting easier and easier and easier to build these apps, but at some point it becomes so easy that they're completely kind of disposable, and like the value of them kind of is completely different than what it is now. So it's it's a very interesting time for sure.
It is, and I think that goes back to what Kieran was saying around the satisfaction that you get from building, and perhaps, because applications are going to be coming out on a conveyor belt now more and more, just because people can build more easily. I think, again, it forces us to think more intentionally about what we're going to build, and then it puts more emphasis on, well, okay, the technical is there, the functionality has been built for you, but how can you build a better UX that gets the user or solves the problem in a better way? Like, how do you build a brand that people resonate with, that is more interesting than anyone else could build beyond the technical? And then how do you understand, or to what extent do you understand the problem you're solving to a degree that no one else who's building in a similar space does, so that you build features or understanding or community in a way that, again, creates a bit more of that moat, versus just the technical, because the functionality is not a moat really now, and as you say, James, existentially will not be a moat moving forward, if everyone can do it.
That's it. But I guess on the flip side, there are still millions and millions of Excel spreadsheets out there that are waiting to be turned into apps. So, and I think, Paul Graham, I think, always says, like, the world needs more software, like, full stop. So, I think I'm kind of thinking maybe both things cancel each other out. Like, yes, it gets a lot easier, but then there's also a lot more demand as well. So, very, very exciting times. So I think we're about at half an hour here. So thanks so much, Max. Congratulations again on 5 years of 100 score. It's such an amazing achievement. It's been great to follow your progress. And where can people find out more about you? Where can they find you online?
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me on. It's been a blast. So you can find me on 100, so the number 100, school.com, and then if you want to reach out to me on Twitter, it's just at Haining Max, and then my LinkedIn is the same. So please do reach out if you have any questions. But thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you very much. There we go, 100school.com. Brilliant.
Amazing.
Thanks, Kieran, as well. Any final
thoughts?
Thank you,
Max. Oh my God, don't ask me final thoughts. No, just thank you, Max. I think, it's been amazing to watch your evolution over the last few years, and how you've adapted to all the changing trends, how you successfully managed to avoid jumping onto, like, the crypto Web3 bandwagon. I think you've done it very thoughtfully and intelligently, and you're an inspiration to us all. And just like seeing all of the people who recorded those videos for you, saying how much you've changed their lives, and I imagine there were many more who were too nervous to make a video, but it's pretty amazing what you've done. And I think the education market for this kind of stuff is just going to increase and increase, so you're in a really good position, and I wish you all the best, and looking forward to seeing what you get up to next.
Thanks so much. No, very kind. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Don't forget, you can find us on the web at createwith.com, on YouTube at createwithhq, or on Spotify or whatever other platform you use. If you like the episode, we'd love it if you could give us a rating. They make a massive difference. But that's it for this week. Don't forget, tickets are available for the Create With conference. Advanced tickets are still available for £99, so check out createwith.com for those. That's going to be on the 22nd of May in London, where we're going to be talking about this in a lot more detail, I'm sure. So if you can come along, it would be great to see you. But that's it for this week. Thanks very much.